By the end of the 60s, the Palestinians had become masters of their own destiny. But a bloody showdown was on the horizon. Not with Israel, but with fellow Arabs. But not all Arab states held the Palestinians in such high esteem. King Hussein was still reeling from the loss of the West Bank in 1967. In Jordan, armed Palestinians strolled through the streets, enjoying freedom of movement and launching operations from Jordanian territory against Israel. Jordan began to view these attacks with increasing alarm. They had set up a state within a state in Jordan, and the actions they planned and carried out soon began to rock the region. Armed gunmen roamed the streets of the capital Amman and Jordan's other main cities like Irbid and Zarqa. Palestinian guerrillas no longer restricted themselves to bases in the more inaccessible parts of the country. Complaints about Palestinian excesses quickly mounted.
Between 1967 and 1971, there were more than 30,000 cases of lawlessness, from the throwing of hand grenades to premeditated murder. There were even attacks against His Majesty the King. All of this was tolerated with tremendous patience by His Majesty, because I think he felt a certain responsibility for the events of 1967.
This leftist zeal, I call it their late childhood, manifested itself in the celebration of Lenin's birthday and delivering Marxist speeches from pulpits of mosques. It was an excuse for theft. Expensive cars would be stolen, and the excuse was that they belonged to the bourgeois classes. It was leftist immaturity.
September struck its first blow. The target was this man, Jordanian Prime Minister Wasfi al-Tal, whom Palestinians accused of responsibility for their expulsion from Jordan.
As soon as he entered the hotel, we opened fire on him. We shot him 14 times. Then we gave ourselves up.
To be an Arab in the Middle East or North Africa means you should support and embrace Arab nationalism. Means that all Arabs are brothers and sisters, regardless of religion or borders. But most importantly, embracing and supporting the Palestinian cause against Israel. After World War II, the Arab League, which is a total failure in my opinion, had many agendas. But maybe the most prominent one, and the one that is really their rallying point, was Palestine. The fact that Israel, a Jewish state, is oppressing the mostly Arab and Muslim Palestinians is regarded as an attack on Arab identity and Arab security and Arab religion too. And for many decades up till now, many Arab leaders and groups are still making the claim that Palestine is the Arabs' most urgent and first issue, and they need to be fully involved in it, and they should forget their domestic policies. And so that's what happened. Arabs across the Arab/Muslim world started to identify with Palestine, and it became almost like a religion, something sacred. I call it the sacred cow of the Middle East. You're not supposed to, you should like fall in and support the cause. And some Arab leaders and groups, they're pushing for teaching this stuff in schools. But one thing the Arab media and Arab historians are now willing to admit is that embracing the Palestinian cause brought a lot of misery, lots of problems, started unnecessary conflicts and sometimes wars. They're not willing to talk about that. And I kind of understand why. I mean, you know, being an Arab in the Middle East or North Africa, the minute you start becoming critical of Palestine, especially if you're critical of Palestine and being pro-Israel at the same time, you're automatically a traitor, an informant, and an enemy of Islam. I will mention many examples where Arab regimes did the impossible to support and embrace the Palestinian cause, but in return were met with chaos, disrespect, violence. Uh, but today, the country I'm going to be talking about is going to be Jordan. After the Six Day War in 1976, the PLO moved into Jordan and they started launching attacks against Israel from the Jordanian side with the help of the Jordanian military. There was a famous battle called the Battle of Karama, where Palestinian and Jordanian forces attacked Israel. It is considered in the Middle East to be a Palestinian victory. But after this battle, the PLO gained more and more popularity. They started getting applause from and admiration from all over the Arab world. They started getting showered with donations, both monetary donations and military donations. By early 1970, the PLO started to get involved in Jordanian politics, and they started to act recklessly. They started step by step to turn on the whole country of Jordan. They started to they stopped complying with Jordanian laws and regulations. They started disrespecting local authorities, started to ignore military checkpoints. They even started, you could call it a country, a state within a state. They started collecting taxes from civilians, started setting up their own checkpoints. They started to make up their own laws. And since they were a Marxist, Leninist, leftist group, they started to spray paint like Marxist literature on mosques and churches and stuff like that. They were literally an attack on the country's religion, the country's economy, and the big threat to national security. They took to the streets and they tried to overthrow the regime of King Hussein. And they did it so many times, they even attempted to assassinate him more than twice. Twice or three times, I'm not sure, but I'm sure it's at least twice. They attempted to assassinate the king. On September 6th, 1970, a group called the PFLP, a group associated with the PLO, hijacked three airplanes and landed them in the town of Zarqa. Those planes were filled with foreign nationals. Some of them were Israelis. They took the passengers as hostages, and in front of cameras, in front of reporters, they blew up those airplanes. And when they were asked the reason why, was because so they can gather world attention, so they can bring some sympathy and attention to their cause from the international community. Yeah, nothing says oppressed like engaging in terrorism against innocent civilians. Yeah, that would gather world sympathy. After all of this lawlessness, Jordan, as a country, they started to get a taste of what Israel deals with on a daily basis. And so they decided to raid and launch attacks on areas and camps and villages where the PLO and their different factions are known to be stationed at. This resulted in over 4,000 killed, and those areas with PLO presence were totally surrounded by the Jordanian military, and the attacks on them continued until July 23rd, 1971. The PLO and many of its factions, they were eventually driven out of Jordan to Lebanon, and they went through Syria. In retaliation, since they felt so humiliated and broken, they decided to start an organization within the PLO called Black September. This organization assassinated Jordanian Prime Minister Wasfi al-Tal in Cairo, and they were also famous for the Munich attack that killed the 11 Israeli athletes in Germany. So this is what Jordan gets for supporting and embracing the Palestinian cause. Their laws were broken, their economy, their national security threatened, and their citizens killed. That's it for today, guys. If you like what I do, if you like my content, support my channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the like, hit the bell for notifications. I see you in the comments, and I'll see you again in another video.